Hi everyone. Can you believe the sunset behind me? Oh my gosh, look how pretty. Um, I am Azure, also known as the Fairy Coach Mother, and I have an important message for any of my folks out there who have survived something really challenging. I had a really rough childhood. Some of you out there probably also did. Maybe you had a different type of challenge. Maybe it was a rough relationship or a job loss or the death of someone that was really special to you or something. But this space is dedicated to people who are overcomers. And the important message that I have is that you are so much more than a survivor. We hear the word survivor a lot out there. It's kind of like a classic term when you think of, people who've survived, rough situations, like I mentioned. But overcomers is so much better. I don't really like the term survivor myself. I've never really liked it because I feel like there's just a connotation to it for me that I don't really like, and it just doesn't really feel super resonant. And so, basically a survivor, the definition of a survivor is someone who remains alive when other people wouldn't necessarily. And so, people who've like survived certain things, yes, like we do meet the definition of survivor. Not everyone would have survived my childhood, for example, with their psyche intact anyway. But an overcomer is more than that. An overcomer is someone, I'm looking at my notes. My overcomer is someone who succeeds and prevails in dealing with an opponent or obstacle. So, you're not just surviving, you are defeating the thing. So when you think of like someone who is maybe like, I don't know, they had a near drowning or something, they're on the side of the shore and they're like, oh my God, they're gasping for breath or choking, they've survived, but they haven't thrived after that experience yet. And pretend, just kind of using that example, someone could never go in the water again. They could have a big phobia of water, so that's so that could cripple them, right? Like it could prevent them from having fun times in the water and swimming and having the health benefits or whatever. So an overcomer would process that experience, heal themselves, and get back in the water. That is overcoming. And that's really the difference here. So I'm here to tell you that you are so much more than a survivor. You are an overcomer. I am too. And I really want to dedicate this space to, I want to create like the Overcomers Collective. We're a collection of people who've all gone through some stuff, and we're not just like surviving it. We're expecting more from ourselves. I don't want to just have this thing be like, leave a mark on me the rest of my life. It's, I want to overcome all of the effects of it. So, surviving though is the first step, of course, and so if you're here, congrats, you did that step. However, if you are currently in a dangerous situation and you're watching this, please get help. And there's lots of, resources out there, help hotlines and so on. If you want to reach out to me, I can help direct you to the right place and stuff. But if you're in a dangerous situation, get out so that you can start the healing process, becoming a survivor and an overcomer. In general, I want to make this the year where I help as many people as possible go from survivor to overcomer. So, how do you know if you're kind of in the survival space or if, you're in the overcomer space? So I like to play in my coaching in general. I like to play a game of, instead of truth or dare, I like to play truth and dare. So, here's your truth. List 4 things that you've survived in your life. So like it could be childhood experiences, it could be a traumatic, like an accident, it could be a relationship of some kind, toxic job situation. It could be a number of things. So what are the 4 top things that come to your mind as far as things that you've survived? And they might not all be equal in like intensity, right? So it could be like one of them might be like, oh, okay, my childhood in a nutshell. That's a pretty big one. And then it could be like, oh my gosh, the total like mortification of everyone in the fourth grade knowing my crush and it just being very public knowledge and them not really liking me back and stuff. And like just the total mortification of that, so like obviously very different in severity. But just list your top four. Okay, so then here's the second question that you can really tell. In what ways are those events or things still affecting you? So, it could be like, I feel a lot of shame, or I'm not confident, or I hold myself back from, these things, or I find myself repeating toxic relationship patterns, or I never let myself get the thing that I want to get. I mean, it could be any number of things, but you'll know. And if something, sometimes you don't always know, actually, sometimes you could have some mental blocks around it. And so, in those cases, I would say when you ask yourself, like, in what ways are those things still affecting you, you'll, in the very least, still have a negative emotion. So it could be like you feel shame, you feel anger, you feel sadness. If you really sit with that question, it won't be neutral. It will be some kind of negative emotion. And you might be like, well, I can't really think of the way that it affects me, but I know that question made me feel kind of a turn in the pit of my stomach. So, so that's how you know that there's something still there to tease out. So, the difference between like surviving versus, overcoming is, surviving is, you survived the experience, but it could still be having a lingering effect on you. Whereas fully overcoming is like you accept the past as historical fact, but it feels very neutrally charged. So, it could be something like, yeah, I can't change what happened to me in my childhood, but I have a very happy adult life. And who knows? I mean, maybe if I had had a happier childhood, I wouldn't have been able to carve out as happy of an adulthood. I certainly probably wouldn't be as good of a mom. Ironically, I think having not a great childhood made me a better mom. So it's like you kind of see there's a neutral charge and or even a positive silver lining. Oprah has a quote about forgiveness, and it goes something like, true forgiveness is being able to, genuinely say to the people who've hurt you, thank you for that experience. And I think that that kind of applies here. That might be a stretch, like I'm never going to say, oh, thanks, Dad, for, the things that he did to me. But it did shape me into who I am, and I think that in the very least, it's like going from a place where, I would, I had lots of emotion, related to dad things in the past, like if I went to a wedding and there was a father-daughter dance or the father walking the daughter down the aisle, that would be really hard for me to spectate because it brought up a lot of pain for what I didn't experience in my life. And then, now it's kind of like, yep, my dad was my dad. It's just very neutrally charged. It's like, it's like when you have static and then and you can feel the electricity in your hair and on your body and you're like, oh gosh, I know that I'm going to get shocked. And then you touch something and it shocks and then it's neutral again. It's the same idea. So feeling that negative emotion is just a sign that there's something to tease out. There's a shock that you need to, that you just need to touch. Okay. And what that thing is here's the dare. The dare for this session is to to basically dare to name those emotions. You know, sometimes we get so avoidant with our emotions in general. It's like, I don't even want to name it. I don't have time to think about that right now. I'll just, push it off. And sometimes in our day, things can happen and it's like, oh, I'm at work. This isn't really a great time to be dealing with this. But just like set aside some time for later in the car, at home, something like that. To just actually just really sit with yourself and sit with your emotions, and to at least have the courage to name them. So, when you think about those 4 top things that you've survived, what are the emotions that come to mind? Is it in the realm of anger? I mean, there's anger can range from like a slight irritation to like total rage, right? And there's like so many in between. So is there something on the anger spectrum? Is there something on the sadness spectrum? So again, kind of like slightly melancholy to like, oh my gosh, I am deeply depressed. Something on the shame spectrum. It's like, oh, I feel a little guilty about that choice versus I feel shame about, who I am. Like at my core, I am an unlovable person, so just have the courage to name those things. And I'll give this a caveat, of course, all of this is, as a good supplement for any healing work that you're doing if you're working with a therapist. I'm not a therapist, I'm a coach. So I just, name that as a disclaimer. So, if this feels like it could be potentially triggering for you and in a way that's unsafe, please work with your professional about this. But if you feel like you could do this with coaching, name those emotions. And sometimes people have a hard time like accessing those things, or they just feel like, I used to have a really hard time feeling like alone. Not just feeling alone, being alone. Like being alone with my own thoughts was like really scary for me. And sometimes it just helps to talk it out with someone. So if that would be helpful for any of you, my contact information will be in the description box below. If you have a situation that you'd love my take on, feel free to message me with it, or we can set up a session, or you can even put it in the comment section. I'll try to address it in a future video. And then lastly, if you like this vibe, please like and subscribe. I'm going to be doing lots of videos in detail about what, how to alchemize these emotions to go from negative to neutral to positive, so that you can go from survivor to overcomer. But for now, remember the truth. So name them, or name the events and how they're affecting you, and the dare of, what are the emotions? How do they feel in your body? Is it like a burning rage, or is it in your stomach, or that it feels like it's coming out of your throat, or, or is it like a deep sadness, like it feels like you're crushing under the weight of your rounded shoulders? Like, what is that somatically sensory like experience like in your body? And why? Like, what is the belief that's under those feelings? It feels like I was cheated out of the life I should have had, or how could this person be so evil to do this to me, or whatever those things are. But name those things. Sometimes emotions just want to be named, and then they can help. That can be the beginning of them dissipating. Sometimes that's all you need, is just to name it, and then it dissipates for like, less egregious things in our life. So anyway, so that's your truth and that's your dare. And I hope you stick around. I'd love to be of help to any of you. And I hope to talk to you soon. Bye.